gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them. 0.0.
So close.
There's always next year, Professor.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through.
Good evening. Welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. I'm Leanne Lohman, joined tonight by David Korab, Dave Ribeiro, and Zach Franciscus. Bob Quinn should be popping in here momentarily. Guys, look, we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, but real quick, we just have to say that, Matthew Stafford is surely off the table for the Steelers, right? After his, coincidental run-in with Brady on his private ranch in Montana. I don't know how that happens. Now, all of a sudden, news is out today or this evening, just before we started the show, that Stafford and the Raiders have come to an agreement, but now it's up to the Rams and their part in this. Were you guys surprised by this news at all?
I'm just happy the Steelers are out because I didn't think that was a good match at all. I'm just kind of relieved at that.
Yep. When it comes to Brady, nothing surprises me with this. And what are we supposed to believe, that Matthew Stafford and his entourage just walking? Wait, you own this massive amount of land we've been walking on randomly for 4 hours? You silly goose. And then they go inside.
The guy who originally reported the story, I guess, is actually, I heard Mike Florio talking about it today, is actually a co-worker of Brady's for his analyst job or whatever. And so he said, that there's this basically calls it tampering, that Brady engages in. And Brady comes back and he's like, whoa, I wrote that wrong. I meant that we coincidentally bumped into each other. I didn't mean we had a scheduled meeting. And whoever the guy is, I forget who he said the reporter is, but he doubled down on it. He's like, dude, that is not what you said happened at all. So now you got his own coworkers calling him out. Is he just going to get to do whatever he wants?
Pretty much.
Literally. That's what this
Tom
is.
Brady.
Tom Brady can just do whatever the fuck he wants, and we're just supposed to ignore it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. The guy should not be allowed, like I told you guys in prep, he should not be allowed to just be a half owner, commentator, and yet be best friends with all these guys that he wants to somehow talk to bring in to play for the Raiders. It just shouldn't be allowed, dude. It just should not be allowed.
It's too many fingers in different pots, and
Right.
Nobody else would be allowed to do it. So I don't know why he is. Do you know what I mean? You've got other owners following the rules, doing what they're supposed to do, and then him just doing this.
I don't know why Stafford would want to go there, except I guess the money. I'm sure they're going to pay him.
Money.
Mike Florio said he thinks it's all about money for him. He said, because whoever he was talking to, I think it was Filippone, said yesterday, said he doesn't care about winning. He wants to win a Super Bowl. And Florio said, no, if he wanted to win a Super Bowl, he'd stay in Los Angeles.
Go to the Raiders?
They've
got one player.
One big bag, which is interesting because if you look at, I haven't done the math, but Vaughn's post here about $360 million is what he's made in his career.
How much is enough?
What do you need to make?
I don't know.
That's
crazy.
If you give me $360 million, I will be happy with it, and I will go away quietly.
I love you guys, but you'd never see me again. $360 million, I'd be far, far away.
I always tell my wife, I'm like, I would take 1/360th of that and be happy.
Yeah.
I don't need the whole
island in the Caribbean with all the pigs. That's where you'll find me. You can come take a boat out there. I'll be on the island with my wild pigs and my dog sanctuary. And
it's like that meme, right? I won't say anything, but there'll be signs.
Yeah,
there will be signs.
Hopefully this does take us away from the older direction, and if nothing else, maybe force us into looking there, because if we can't go older, so that's the only positive in this. Because I was okay with
David's a baller.
That's funny.
Vaughn, you're killing me, dude.
I don't know what their plan is at quarterback, because you hear something new every goddamn day. They want.
While we're talking about that, so Aditi Kinkawawa says yesterday, she said, everything I've been told from people in the building is that Russell Wilson will not be re-signing with the Steelers.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know that anybody's super upset about that, but were you surprised to hear her be so definitive?
Is Art Rooney considered in the building? Because I think he's the only one that really wants Russell Wilson, right? So maybe that's they can say whatever they want, but if the boss
Yeah.
comes down and say sign Russell,
That's kind of
Wilson,
Aditi's style, though. When Aditi has news, I mean, she's like, yeah, pretty confident this is it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, she said that. I listened to the interview and she said that. She said, look, guys, when I don't know something, I tell you, like, I think there's a shot. And she says, and when I know there's not a shot, she said, like with Ayuk last year, I told you guys it's not happening. She said, and it didn't happen.
Right.
So she said, when I'm pretty definite, I'm pretty definite.
yeah, I
you
just
should have
think
told
that,
Omar there's no chance.
well, I just think they're being, politically correct with what they say. He's going to do GM speak. Russell Wilson, we already know, is known to be basically a politician in his future because he's going to say the right thing.
Yeah.
And no one's going to, basically be honest about anything. Really.
Well, surely Omar doesn't want to paint himself in a corner again after last year where he said, whatever he said about we're working on making Kenny Pickett happy or whatever the words were he used, but basically moving forward with Pickett. And then I think it wasn't even a week later he was gone.
Like he literally said, we're confident with Kenny, look forward to the future with him or something like that.
Right.
You're like,
Yeah.
oh, really? That future changed within a week. Weird.
Yeah, glad you're confident because none of us were.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So the NFLPA grades came out, and I thought it was interesting. The Steelers stayed in the same spot, which was like 28th, but they did move up. All the bottom 5 teams all moved up. So from like a D- to a C. So I guess that some of the improvements they made last year, they did make some improvements after the bad survey, even though Rooney said this is only about the media and nobody really cares or whatever his comment was last year. So they did make some improvements. I heard they put in like childcare during games, which was a little bit of a boost. But still not much better. Were you guys surprised at all like this with, Tomlin still had an A, Rooney had a D or whatever, locker room got a D.
Yeah, I mean,
I know Tomlin got an A, but wasn't there something like his reception to what was said in the locker room was graded low, or like when the players were asked, they said, "Well, we graded him high, but we don't. He doesn't really take in what we say," and that's worrisome. The grades the low grades didn't surprise me, especially Rooney. I just don't think it's going to matter. I don't think anyone's going to do anything about it.
Under Tomlin, the thing you're talking about, I said the players feel that Tomlin is moderately receptive to the locker room feedback on the team's needs, ranking him 15 of 32 head coaches.
Right.
So middle of the pack.
It's strange for someone who is a player's coach and you want to play for Tomlin and all that. You think he'd be higher about listening directly to what the players are saying.
But that's the first time I've heard that comment. Do you know what I mean? So maybe this is something that, is growing in momentum and maybe it will reach his ears. Do you know what I mean? If this is something that's growing, I think that they really, I think other years there hasn't always been the opportunity, but you have this giant quarterback controversy. And if you've got people who are really outspoken about Justin versus Russ or Matt Canada or whatever it is, then they have something to finally speak up for.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not really surprised by any of this. We know that players love Tomlin, and we know that Rooney, when it comes to the facilities and different stuff like that, and coaches as well, just doesn't spend the money. So I'm not surprised.
Sorry.
It's two different things, Dave. They're not in the same.
Right.
They're not even in the same strat. Do you want to? Okay, PNC Park voted number 1.
Beautiful
place.
Yeah.
We suck ass. We suck ass every season. Guess what? The fans don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about beautiful bathrooms. They don't give a fuck about beautiful, whatever you want to call it. They don't care because the Pirates never win. They've had 4 winning seasons since 1992, Dave. They are not the same. They're not the same.
Yeah, I would gladly play in a show.
They're not the same.
Steelers.
You can't compare baseball and football.
The Steelers spend on
it's
players.
2 different sports.
And they do win more than they lose. They do. They spend up to the cap with like 5-10 mil.
We've had this conversation about the cap all the time.
That's why it's so different because baseball, if you want to spend New York Yankees money, you can have every great player in the world if you're willing to put the money out there. But in football, the idea that you have a salary cap does somewhat,
Nutting is bottom 4. Nutting is bottom 4 every season in baseball and spending. Bottom 4 every season. And they lose every season except for 4.
Didn't we go over the cash spent? The Steelers are at the bottom of that list too.
If the Steelers didn't win, and if the Steelers didn't spend on players, I'd be with you. I'd be with you.
Do they win because he spends money, or do they win because Mike Tomlin's one of the better coaches?
AR2 is the
come on.
Bob Nutting of spending money on facilities. There.
That I agree with.
I mean,
all the evidence.
If you want to go,
all the evidence is there for you, Dave. He doesn't spend money on facilities. He doesn't spend money on the field, on the park. He doesn't spend money on coaches. The only thing he spends money on is the absolute bottom, as little as he can on the players. He spends up to the cap.
Players,
not above it. Doesn't throw away cash, or doesn't give. They don't give signing bonuses to anybody but quarterbacks. They don't. You say they spend money, but they really don't. They save the money. Every other team in the league gives signing bonuses to wide receivers, to offensive linemen.
Yeah.
The Steelers don't.
They win more than they lose. That's not Pirates. If they were losing, like under AR2, right? Just strictly under AR2. I can't remember which season it was that Dan was done and AR took over. If you want to say from then on they've lost, right? The majority of their seasons are lost seasons. They lose it. Fine. Like I can't argue that.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this owner, not the owners in general for the Steelers.
But what I'm trying to say is that they still have winning seasons, man. They still have not had a losing season. Like, I can't go there with you. If they even had just a couple since AR2 took over, then I could go that with you. But I can't. They do spend the money on players, and they do win.
Baseball, but what is the Steelers of that? What is the team in baseball that every single year might make the playoffs, but is always going to be on the cusp, never bad, never good? Is there a team because that's what I would consider as that?
The Steelers have always been referred to as the Yankees of baseball.
Oh, I wouldn't.
But I don't think
up until recently.
Right, because the Yankees spend so much.
That's different.
I'm just saying, the reference I've heard.
Yeah.
That's because of champiomships, not because of
that.
Well,
to me,
I'm just saying that's the only one I can think of that I've heard people actually say.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't be more different.
And no one can be what the Dodgers are. I can't compare
It's hard to compare. It's hard to compare it because every baseball team is so different because what the owners choose to spend is so different. Like even within MLB, there's a lot of apples to oranges comparisons.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, how about the Cardinals? The Cardinals draft well. They develop well.
Yeah.
They're usually always they're not spending crazy like Yankees, Dodgers, etc. Yeah. But they're always consistently, if they have 1 year off, that next year, bang, they're right back in.
But I'm not comparing.
That's who I would compare them to.
What happens on the field? I'm comparing the owners of what they do. That like I said, if you switch them and put Rooney in charge of the Pirates, you would have the same, if not worse. He wouldn't spend any money.
You'll not get any argument me out of them not spending on coaches, facilities, stuff like that. You're not going to get an argument with me. But
that's my point. Then we see it the same way.
If they did what Nutting did, then they would lose games. They would lose more games than they win. No. But they don't do that. And if they didn't spend money, if they were always, say, $30 million under the cap, right? Okay, then. They're not really spending all the way up to the cap to actually put the best out there. That's Nutting. That's Nutting.
Because there's no salary cap and there's no floor. So he doesn't have to spend a certain amount of money.
But he's still bottom four every year. Bottom four every year.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. Greg wants to know, do you guys think that sharing the practice facility with Pitt affects what can be done? I mean, I think it seems like that's a pretty obvious yes. I mean, and it doesn't help that we're squished in between the Allegheny and the train tracks, so you can't expand. We'll never have a facility that looks like the country estate that the Ravens have. Hey, Bob.
Geographically, don't work.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late, everybody.
What's up, Bob?
We were just talking about the grades and spending on the facilities and stuff like that.
So college facilities are normally pretty decent. So does that mean that the Steelers are holding Pitt back as far as what they're able
to do?
I saw a picture of a
Alabama's
college
facilities are off the chain.
Yeah, I saw pictures of some compared to the Steelers. I was like, good Lord. I couldn't believe how nice they were compared to what the Steelers have.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys mentioned it, but I mean, Caboli always says that until Pitt, they either kick Pitt out or Pitt, voluntarily leaves, that they're always going to score low in the facilities. Although that being said, I thought it was interesting that Donnie Shedrick on 93.7 was saying his locker room in high school was nicer than the Steelers' locker room.
Yeah. There's a lot of negative comments about that locker room. And I mean, there's obviously, look, just because you're limited in space doesn't mean the space you have can't be nice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know they made some upgrades last year, but it sounds like they obviously need to do some more. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know how you make that work when you've got Pitt there, but either it's some cohabitation space that they don't use on your game days, or I mean, there's got to be some way to make that work better.
I think they keep the Pitt around because Pitt throws in money to help them.
The bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, cheap owner.
For the amount of your
I can see it.
Well, I do believe that the city, when they approved the stadium, put an allowance in where they had to share. So I don't know if there's a way to change that. I think that's the case, but I mean, obviously they need to separate. At this point, the field's starting to be, 25 years old. Maybe it's time to think about a different facility and separating it out. The billions of dollars they make versus the investment, you would think they could spend some money on the stadium. But that being said, it almost seems like they have to move it if they want to do anything nice.
Something I did want to bring up that I noticed here with these grades. Dave, remember how you brought up that guy was evaluating for the Ravens? He was noticing how quick they were
the sports science guy.
So did you guys notice strength coaching was ranked 32nd, dead last?
It's a new guy
strength
too.
Coaches.
It's a new guy.
And then nutritionist dietitian was 30th. So I mean, we're talking bottom 3.
Yeah,
in
those
things
are important.
that I just.
Yep.
Is it just that they're stuck in their old ways and they just need to get with the new? I mean, is that what this is here too?
Well,
I don't.
Who do you think hires the strength and conditioning coach? Is it Tomlin or is it?
I have no idea.
It's got to be Tomlin.
It's got to be Tomlin, right?
They took a hit this year. Although I did hear somebody say, I can't remember if it was Brooke Pryor or Dee Dee. Somebody said that they were told that it's not unusual for a strength and conditioning group their first year to have a slightly lower score because they're just kind of getting the lay of the land and learning what they have available to them and all of those things. So whoever had told her this said that from the Players Association said they wouldn't worry unless their score went lower next year or remains low. You know what I mean? The first year doesn't concern them.
Well, I don't know, being that the strength, allegedly, that it was the conditioning test that, had Russell Wilson miss the first 6 weeks. Right. Roman Wilson could never get back on track, and God knows who else at this point. Maybe.
Well, apparently, Roman Wilson's got more than health issues. He's got between the ear issues, if you believe some of the people.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
Oh, you didn't hear about that today, Zach?
I did not. I must admit, I was focusing on how fast defensive linemen were running.
Dave, do you know verbatim who the report and all that was? Or
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was Caboli, wasn't it?
I don't remember, but I can look it up real fast.
Yeah, it was something to the point of there was issues with Roman Wilson, and he just could not pick up the playbook.
Yeah.
Could not pick it up.
We have a really simple one.
Basically, that's the gist of it. Yeah,
that's what we would.
It was Bob Labriola.
Okay.
So he answered questions from fans.
That's right.
It was only after the Steelers started Wilson's 21-day clock to come off injured reserve that he was, quote, working his tail off and doing good in practice. My understanding of the situation is that at no point was there a legitimate level of confidence that Roman Wilson understood the offense and his responsibilities within it to the degree that would allow him to execute it at a game speed during the stretch run of an NFL regular season.
And Bob Labriola is not exactly those kind that come up with, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So
he works for the Steelers, right?
Right. Wait, he works for the Steelers?
Yeah.
Isn't he the Steelers guy?
Right. Yeah, Steelers.com, right? Officially, he's the guy.
Isn't that kind of a interesting thing for him to put?
Doesn't he do that
works for the Steelers?
Mike Tomlin hates Roman Wilson, and he's feeding Labriola stuff to let the world know that he got drafted an idiot, and he doesn't want to.
As soon as you said he works for the Steelers, I was like, wait a second.
It's bad.
This is my thing. Ted says the Steelers should have known that before the draft.
Absolutely.
Their homework. And I agree if it's entirely true, but it makes me wonder if the issue is that, because somebody else said this, like Fittipaldi or one of those guys, that no matter what anybody else thinks, that he missed that whole chunk of training camp. And to miss that amount of time and then try to step, into this moving offense, it is way more difficult than people think. So he said, that was the reason why. How true could that be?
We're talking 8 fucking months here.
Not just that. Let me jump in really quick with I've worked in the education system. I know some of us also have, but the biggest challenge, and to me, what let me see if a teacher was good or whether I was a good teacher, is how fast could you catch up a student that was either behind or came in the middle. With everything we know about the Steelers coaching staff, about their abilities, I don't know if a lot of it is on Roman Wilson, because maybe they simply could not stop or prioritize enough to be able to get him there. Whatever is needed for them to be able to focus on him and the rest of the team was not there.
Well,
so that's the wide receiver coach's job, right? Azani? Well, he should have kept this kid up to. What do you have a wide receiver coach for?
We know they can't get ready for Thursday games, so this may have some.
Okay,
this is bad. It's a bad look all the way around.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the other thing too. Do we honestly think that Arthur Smith's offense was more complicated than the Michigan offense?
No, that's my thing.
That's what makes me not quite believe this is true, because he was able to handle the Michigan offense. So why wouldn't he be able to handle stepping into even a watered down version of what the Steelers do? Just a few plays,
And if they thought he was a valuable asset, they would have just let him run 3 or 4 plays. It's not like they had a Hall of Fame lineup of wide receivers. They were desperate for anybody. So maybe he's just not that good. And they said, shit. He's not too bright. He's not very talented.
I said months ago, don't be surprised. They cut this kid, trade this kid, whatever, this coming season. And you guys are like, what? I'm telling you, now they've put out a hit piece on him through Bob Labriola. So don't tell me that there's not a chance this might happen, where they trade this kid or something.
If they gave up on this kid and cut him after this, I will keep a close eye on the Chargers. If they pick him up in seconds of him being released, then you know that Harbaugh knows, hey, the Steelers don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yep.
Or if they don't pick him up at all, you'll know the Steelers shouldn't draft him in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That works both ways. But yeah, and this is such a bad look for the team all the way around. I mean, they either blew the draft pick or they can't coach a player. Which is it? It's bad. It's a third round pick. It's not
you know what? In fairness, there is an explanation in the middle. Supposedly, we don't know if this is true at this point. Who knows what they're making up about this kid? But supposedly he had some concussion issues. And if he has some lingering concussion thing with his brain...
Tony Pauline did bring that up when I interviewed him, which I didn't know he had concussion issues.
Oh, apparently they didn't either.
Yeah, I mean, they never brought that up. They never said it at all, that he had any kind of head injury. It was his lower body, right? Leg, ankle, whatever it was. So I don't know if that's it or not, but
I mean, I hope for his sake that's not the hey.
That's something you don't want to joke around about.
Pass is physical. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even make it into the NFL if you're that.
Yeah, you'd think.
I mean, the kid said. Remember we talked about it? He said, "This is as healthy as I've ever been." That was just before they played the playoff game.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it. Then Arthur Smith said, "Gee, I hope we can last long enough for Roman Wilson to get healthy." It's like, what the fuck is going on over there?
That was the best. I love
my God.
He brings up a good point that he wouldn't be the first player to show up that can't learn a playbook. That some of these guys just rely on their talent, and I think that was Broderick Jones in college.
Oh, Michigan's one of those schools that generally has
decent
students, right? It's not like LSU or something where they just roll out anybody with a pulse. I mean,
can go there.
I don't know.
You have a criminal record, just apply. It's an automatic get in at LSU.
It's true. But Michigan's not generally like that. But I mean, somebody can slip through the cracks, I guess. I don't know.
Justin said Roman Wilson is moved out
I don't know. Wilson is a little bigger. Wilson's a little bigger. So usually Timu's a little smaller.
The cheap imitation.
Yeah,
it's anyway.
Funny.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Omar Khan's press conference. Everybody was excited to hear Omar Khan talk this week from the Combine, which I think is hysterical because we talked about this at the beginning of the show, his faux pas last year with Kenny Pickett, I was fairly confident he was not going to say anything that anybody could come back later and pin him on that, you know, he spoke incorrectly or gave false hope or whatever. So he kind of said that their priority is quarterback. They have to nail that down before they can figure out who's going to be their wide receiver and all those things. He's hoping to wrap that up by the start of the league year, which is, I think, the 12th. And the tampering period, I think, starts the 10th. And he said, you know, they're still interested in Fields or Wilson as their priority. But he did kind of indicate they aren't closing the door on other people. But now we know Stafford's kind of out. What else did he say? George Pickens, they had a good exit meeting with Pickens, which immediately the press took to mean we're signing him to a 4-year, $400 million extension. I don't think that was quite it. But what were your big takeaways from Omar's press conference?
Dave, I think it was you that. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead.
Wasn't it you that said that you thought maybe Khan and Tomlin have some disagreements going on? Because one of us did, who brought it up, because he maybe Bob was you. He reiterated again that Broderick Jones should be the left tackle, and we know Mike Tomlin has no plans on making Broderick Jones the left tackle, at least not up to this point. And then again, he brought up Roman Wilson was ready in the playoffs. He said it. Roman Wilson was healthy in the playoffs, and Tomlin didn't use him. I'm starting to wonder if he's like, these are my draft picks. And, you know, he's kind of just throwing it out there that Mike Tomlin's not using them or not using them correctly. I'm starting to get convinced. I'm almost at your side there, Bob. There's something weird going on.
Lend credence to that when you hear people say things that kind of directly contradict.
Yep.
Because usually the Steelers kind of stay in lockstep.
Yes.
Me.
Well, training camp hasn't started yet, and the good news is Broderick Jones is currently on top of the left tackle depth chart by default.
With nobody else, yeah.
We'll see if he stays there. Who knows? You know, I listened to him. The thing I was struck most by, and this isn't a take unique to me. I mean, I've heard several people say it over the last couple of days. If I'm Justin Fields, I'm out. I'm not your priority. You're still considering Russell Wilson. You feel like we're equals. You're basically saying everything under the sun to say, well, we'd like to get one of you back, but not feeling the appreciation and the love if I'm Justin Fields. And I'm also looking at, couple of really interesting offensive coordinators might be looking for quarterbacks in teams. So I think with every passing day, we don't just say Justin Fields is our priority. We are pushing him to New York. And if that happens, would we like Uncle Aaron? Would we like Kirk Cousins? Would we like Matt Stafford? Yeah, sure. You know, all those things could be viable and probably better than what we have now. But it's one step closer to being stuck with Russell Wilson. And if that happens, I'm sorry. Play anybody else. Get Kate Graham out of retirement. Get a good draft pick for next year.
I mean,
go ahead,
Zach, I'm surprised I haven't heard you bring up the whole Najee Harris thing, that they're not closing the book on that.
Well, I mainly because
that's
until it
exactly
happens,
our foot shoved in the book and we won't let it close.
Well, you're not the only ones. There's more rumors today
Yeah.
that they're
pretty
talking.
much because I would be saying the same thing over and over again. So if I had something new to say, I genuinely would bring it up. But honestly, me and Leanne on Twitter, you know, we're both happy and going nuts on it. But I don't want to get into it because I know how I feel about it. And I also know that I believe anybody who says straight up Najee's better, Warren's better, anything like that, it's a simplistic view. Yeah. I don't think Najee is better than Warren. I think they two work as a tandem, and I think taking one away from the other is going to hurt the Steelers. Everyone knows that. I'm very excited, and I hope it's true. But, yeah, everyone knows how I feel about that. So.
Well, that rumored deal of 3 years, $20 million,
that doesn't make any sense.
But that's actually a good deal. Like
for the Steelers. For the Steelers, not for Najee Harris.
I would
because
be very
that's right back at that $6.5 million.
Yeah,
is you're looking at such a deep running back.
That might be the problem.
So is it really the best time for Najee Harris to be going out and exploring free agency when teams are going to be like, he wasn't great at the Steelers. He's no Saquon Barkley. Do you know what I mean? So
right.
We just draft our own guy.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear, because I know Bob's about to blow a gasket. I still want them to draft one, just so we're clear. Like, But
absolutely.
Najee at 6.5, I don't mind. But they better fucking bring in, draft a guy, maybe sign
Yes.
another guy. Like I still want that to happen.
I
Like,
agree
want
with
as,
you.
I want as
Amen,
many.
Vaughn.
I want
Amen.
as many different. What do you say, Najee and Russ? It's like the never. I mean,
No
watching
Russ.
those games
No Russ.
again.
All right, I'm going to put this as a question to everybody. Okay, so let's say you do sign Najee to $6.5 million, and you sign Warren to the restricted free agent. tender. So well, now you have Najee and Jalen on the roster. And here you go in the second round, and it pops up. There wasn't the early running backs that we thought, and maybe Trevion Henderson, maybe the guy I like, Caleb Johnson, maybe 2 or 3 of those guys are sitting there. Now at this point, you've committed resources to Najee Harris. You certainly ain't going to pay him $6.5 million to be your third changeup back. Do you cut Jalen Warren? I mean, with these backs, I mean, you guys love Genty, okay? I don't. I wouldn't pick him in the first round. But let's just say he was there and the Steelers did it. If I pick Genty in the first round, what the hell is he going to do with Najee Harris and Jalen Roster on the roster?
If you have Najee and Jalen, you don't draft Genty.
Yeah.
That would be kind of.
I've seen the exact same thing about Baltimore, and the view is weirdly different. It's what an amazing combination Genty would be with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. I genuinely think that if we re-sign Najee and we re-sign Warren, it's not going to be a Najee year one, year two. It's going to be, this is a committee. We signed you guys for these numbers that we did because this is a committee. And if we draft another person, that's a committee too. And that's what they're being. If Najee signs with us, he has to do it knowing he's not the lead back, that there is no real lead back in Pittsburgh. That's how I feel it'll work best. I welcome Genty. I welcome Caleb Johnson. I hope they're smart enough to know 3 backs with our kind of Arthur Smith thing would be fantastic.
If they really evaluate Genty and they feel that he is this generational talent that some people believe he is, right? If that you really feel strongly about that and he's sitting there, then I think you have to take him. I think sometimes you just have to look at that best player available.
Absolutely.
Go with it.
Absolutely.
Because you leave him there, and we'll all be back here in 2 years with everybody bitching about how we could have taken Genty. Instead, we took some big chunky defensive lineman that was mid, you know what I mean? And we could have done this, and he's run for all these yards. So I just think you have to, some of it's luck and some of it's a guess. And I think you have to, if you see somebody like that, you got to shoot your shot. That tight end, I mean, somebody like that's there, you got to.
Warren.
Yeah.
I know a lot. I know a lot of draft experts. Some love Genty. A lot of them, they don't feel like there's enough of a gap between Genty and Amari and Hampton, Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson. They don't feel there is a cream of the crop in this running back class. The top 5 or 6 are really good. So there's not enough of a 1 to 2, so where they feel like Genty is worth the risk. But somebody could take him early in the first round. Based on how the Steelers have been evaluating running backs and first-round running backs, I don't know. We haven't got a running back in the first round who's panned out.
I still say, though, that we can't say that fairly when he ran with this shitty offensive line and shitty offensive coordinators and shitty offenses with bad quarterbacks. I mean, I don't know how that's a fair evaluation of talent.
Franco Harris went to a team that was 4-10 and rushed for 1,000 yards.
He's not Franco.
In fairness to Najee, we've talked about this. He wasn't a first-round back. He's a good back. It's borderline very good back. But he's not a first-round pick. The Genty and Hampton are explosive. They're out of the backfield weapons. They are first-round worthy. Najee Harris didn't have that. It's not a knock against him. It's not,
we did that.
To knock Najee Harris. He just didn't have that. He's not a difference maker.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to take a back in the first round because Najee Harris didn't work out. Because these guys have the breakaway speed and explosion.
We don't live in our fears.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the Lions regret taking their running back in the first round? Of course not.
Steelers haven't taken look at a wide receiver. Steelers haven't taken a wide receiver now in 20 years.
I don't want them to take one in this one in the first round because I don't think there's a first round worthy.
There's
one.
not a first round talent.
Yep.
And I really wasn't making a case for Genty particularly, but more so that idea of that generational talent drops to us at 21 and is there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying, Leanne, and in principle, I would say I agree with you, but I just don't think Genty's a generational talent. I think he's exceptional, but I think there's 6 guys who are exceptional.
Yeah, I think.
Zach, Greg was pushing back on you and wants to know why you want to pay Najee the most money among the running backs if he won't even be called the number 1.
Because it's not that you want to, because of where he is, that's what you have to pay Najee, and it's on the low end of what you have to pay Najee. Yeah. So it's not, so if it was switched around, we would gladly pay Najee what we would pay Warren, but we just can't do that because of where he is, and think that we'll have him. So, and even the 3 for $20 is insane. I don't think Najee will sign for that. He will get so much more anywhere else.
Steelers haven't picked a running back in the first round since. Does anybody want to hazard a guess?
Other than
first round?
First round.
I can't remember.
Mendenhall, is it Mendenhall?
Yes. Yeah. Way to go, Vaughn. Good job, buddy.
Oh, that's right. It was Mendenhall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And before that, I'm looking and
Mendenhall was all right until he went batshit crazy, but he wasn't a bad guy.
I was really young. Did they draft Van Morse?
Yes, in the 3rd round.
3rd round.
Okay.
Yeah.
3rd. I met him. He was nice.
There was a time in the 80s, and since we like to compare these current Steelers to the 1980 Steelers.
Yeah, Worley's right. Worley was a first-round pick, too, yeah.
Worley was 1989. That was the last first. So they haven't done it very often, but Worley, Mendenhall.
Yeah, they hadn't drafted a left tackle in the first round in 40 years, and they did it twice in a row. So
that's true. It's just
this worked out.
This particular draft.
Bad example. Let me take that
back. Real bad.
If you believe that he's a generational back, now as we know, there's Bob and a bunch of people who don't believe. There are people who do, but if that generational back falls, grab him. Other than that, defensive line, running back. This is not the kind of draft where you have to take someone with one of those prime picks and get a legitimate NFL starter. You don't. To me, I hope they don't reach.
Well, buckle up because the Steelers are going to. They're going to draft a defensive lineman.
Calm down, sir.
And just to be clear, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying Genty is not talented. He is talented. I just don't think he's generational.
Yeah. All right. Before we start talking about the defensive combine, I want to bring up a tweet that Andrew Filipponi put out yesterday. I'm saying the source because, take it or leave it. The Steelers have a staff member who would love to bring back former Steeler defensive tackle Javon Hargrave. He knows the defense and is only 32. It would not preclude them from taking D-line in the draft. Hargrave, big name to watch in free agency. Curious what you guys think about this. He's with the 49ers right now, and he hasn't officially been released.
They haven't cut him yet, yeah.
The only 32 is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
Yeah, I get the only either.
Because wasn't Filipponi the same one screaming about how old Cam Hayward was?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then now he's only 32.
So I'll say this. Yeah, 32. But coming off injury too. But we said all this about Cam as well. But we said
Cam's a unicorn.
Said it about Hayward too.
So yeah, but he's a unicorn.
I understand, but we still said it about Cam. Cam came back, was the best defensive lineman we had with a 90-plus grade. So, and the cap hits 9.6 million. What do you guys consider that? Is that a little too much, or is that
if they cut him,
they
cut him, they don't have to pay that salary.
I'm saying that he may be looking for that per.
Yeah, $10 million a year. I don't know. I don't know.
That's where I'm because for me, it personally comes down to the cost.
What's he going to paid 20?
Say again?
What's that?
Wasn't his contract? Didn't he just sign $20 million? I know they're going to cut him. And they're not going to pay him that, but
right.
Yeah, I
don't remember.
Let me see if I still have it.
They paid him a lot. They did.
Here, I got it right here. If they'll think. So it was a 4-year, $84 million contract.
Yeah, 20 plus. I wouldn't. No.
I wouldn't pay him that.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong, no. I mean, he's exceptional. I'm sorry to cut you off, Zach. He's exceptional. I mean, if we could get him in the $10-12 million range, maybe.
That's what I'm asking. I'm asking.
I mean, yeah,
look, if this guy doesn't want, we've got the money, is what I'm trying to say. We've got the money to get a guy that's been productive. I just, to me, it kind of makes sense.
He could play the nose because when we talk defense here in a few minutes. The guys I really like are just a teeny bit undersized, and I don't know that I love Keanu Benton on the nose.
Right.
I don't know. For me,
I think he's
spend 7 or 8 more. What is it?
when you say that Keanu Ben's a little, I don't know if I'd say he's undersized. That makes sense or no?
No, he weighs 290. You would think
So
you want a 300
little
plus
small for
pounder
a nose,
in that nose,
Yeah.
So here's my thing: if you sign Hargrave right with Keanu Ben and Cam, and then you draft one of these other monsters in his draft, that sounds really good to me. I'm just saying, like.
I don't hate the idea of Hargrave, but we really need some
I'm not
players
crazy
that are
about
good
it,
at
man.
stopping the run, and like that's not his specialty. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, I'm just looking at it that way. Like that's really, we need that so badly. I mean, we can't get run over by the Ravens again, twice in a row in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Steelers Almighty said, if you don't have to pay him 20, but if you won't pay Hargrave 12, we aren't even trying.
I mean, he's 33
well,
years
look
old.
who just got up.
I mean, spend 6 or 7 more and get Milton Williams, a guy who's 25-year-old in his prime, who played for the Eagles last year and won a Super Bowl. Why are we signing a 32-year-old defensive lineman? We're not on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl.
You sign him because he's uber talented, Dave. Like he has been really
better.
Good. Yeah,
I mean,
better than who?
Better than Adams, better than there's a bunch of guys.
Yeah, I mean,
better than the Eagles guy too.
No, he's not better than Milton Williams. Man, a 25-year-old kid in his prime or a 32-year-old guy on the way out.
I don't know if I'm quite there. I mean,
no.
Williams is younger, been pretty good.
He was a backup though. I mean,
Milton Williams.
He
started.
No, he was behind Davis and Carter.
They
had a
rotation.
Yeah,
they
had a
rotate their guys. That's splitting hairs. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, he'd be
I
another
don't have
guy
a problem if
that
Hargrave comes for $6-7 million. Whatever, fine. But again, if you're looking at Cam Hayward as the example, that's not the guy because he's a unicorn. 35-year-old defensive linemen don't play like that. Yep. They just don't.
Yes, they don't.
Right.
And the reason Hargrave's not going to stay in San Francisco is he's not playing like that anymore, and they want to get rid of him.
No, it's because he's coming off an injury. They're trying to get rid of a bunch of people.
Yeah,
like that's just they're just trying.
If they thought he was good, they'd keep him.
At $84 million, though, I mean they went.
They
over,
signed a contract. I mean,
but they went over to bring him to San Francisco, and I
they don't think he's worth it
They're
anymore.
trying to shred $84 million. I mean that's a lot of fucking money. So yeah, I could see them trying to get rid of that.
And it's not unprecedented for defensive linemen to be effective well into. I mean, Calais Campbell is still going strong.
That's another unicorn. And then after that, I mean, there aren't many more.
Well, how many more unicorns before we say they're all unicorns? Like,
we got 2. Give me a third, and then I'll start to think.
The guy's been really productive. He'd be better than what they had, and you still draft one. That's my point in all this. My whole point, this whole goddamn season, my whole point's been sign one, draft one, please. At several different positions.
I think you have to.
Like, that's the route they got to go because they have so much money. They have so much cap money. It's like shit. You can afford to do this. Sign one, draft one.
Again.
And bear in mind, Hargrave is. I mean, if you're playing him on the nose, he's only playing in the base set. So when they go to nickel, which is apparently on every running down.
All right, so how much are you going to pay a guy who's going to play 15 snaps a game?
Yeah, you got to get him at the right.
$12-13 million a season? No.
Yeah, you got. Well, I mean, based on what he was making.
If it's 9, maybe, yeah.
I mean, if you're talking to him being the nose and he's going to play, I don't know. The Steelers played the less 3-down linemen than they ever did this year. I think it was like 13% of the time.
Yeah, we played. We had a 3-4 base defense that we played from the nickel and dime set.
Right.
Almost all the time. So you wouldn't be using Hargrave if you're playing him on the nose. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so
Tomlin spend money better elsewhere.
Yeah, Tomlin put us in an undersized 4-3 set. So
exactly. You're going to sign this guy tonight. He's going to sit on the bench next to, a Landon Roberts when the team's in a heavy package. And they'll be watching from the sideline.
Yeah, I know. Or to be honest with you, I mean, they may rotate him in and have him play in Benton's spot. I mean, Hargrave is a pretty good pass rusher.
He's not just a nose. He could play. Yes, he could play. But I don't know.
I agree with Somber. I think if they find somebody great in free agency, so be it. I agree, but otherwise, I don't mind. Picks on D-line. I think we have to get.
It's one or the other.
Got to do that.
It's one or the other.
They're old and some of them aren't very talented. So speaking of defensive linemen, let's talk about the combine. It really kind of kicked off today. It's going on right now. I think still, I've got it on my DVR or whatever to watch when we're done. But we talked about offense on Monday. So let's talk a little bit about defense, and not just specifically what you might have already seen today, but also what you're kind of excited about seeing, who you're looking for, who you're interested in, all of those kinds of things. Kenneth Grant, I thought, was interesting. He talked about his meeting with the Steelers, a big guy from Michigan. I think he's the biggest defensive tackle out there this year. He shed like 20 pounds or something from his playing weight at Michigan. And he said, look, I'm different than these other guys. I'm agile, I'm fast, I'm smart, I know football. He talked about how well his meeting went with the Steelers. Got me kind of hyped up for him. He's looking to be sub 5 in the 40. I'll be curious to see when his time's posted.
Yeah, I know. From a defensive line standpoint, I mean, when we really get into this, I still want corner, and I'll explain why. But for the defensive line, I love Walter Nolan. I would be so excited if we got him. The only guy I like better than Walter Nolan from a first round perspective is Kenneth Grant, because he's a huge human being. Put him on the nose. He can play he's good enough to play tackle. I'm not a fan of Mason Graham. He's going to be gone before we get to him. It's not that I think, I don't think he's a bad player, but I don't think, especially from a combine perspective, it's kind of a high floor, low ceiling thing with Mason Graham. It's a very high floor, but I think Grant will be a better pro. I mean, you just got to love a guy that big who moves that fast. Walter Nolan is really good, but we brought up in chat here a few minutes ago a guy I love from Florida State, Farmer, who I think we can get in the second, third round. So, yeah, there are some really interesting defensive line prospects. I mean, the kid from Kentucky, Walker, I mean, if we got him on day 3, I'd be okay with that. But I'm not as big a fan as some other people are of him.
I thought it was interesting. One of the PFF guys, the draft analyst, said, Wes Euler was talking about it. He said that they told him that there's like 30 to 35 defensive tackles that are like day 1, high day 2 talent. And that's like a remarkable number. And he said the bulk of those guys will go between like 40 and 75 or something, in like where they fit in. And I thought, man, that is really nice to have guys of that caliber to be able to get, with that second round pick, depending on what happens with the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a guy I'm looking for is Nazir Stackhouse. Every mock I do, he's there. He's like, he falls to 7th round. But like, if you see his the reporting on him, he is set to excel at the NFL level as a nose tackle, utilizing his strength and clogging running lanes and disrupting offenses. Sounds like a nice pick for a guy in the 7th round that we could use to clog lanes to help with the run. Yeah. So that's a guy that I don't know why they've got him projected as a 7th rounder, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on this guy during this combine, because this is that guy that could be the second D lineman they go after if they don't sign anybody. If they do want to go to
7th round picks. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense,
But he's a D lineman that, when I started looking at these different scouting reports, I was like, this guy sounds like I don't know why. If you think he's going to excel at the NFL level as a nose tackle, why 7th round is where he's always at. But that's a guy. Like, I like Harmon and Walker and Grant. Oh, my God. I saw footage of Grant running down a running back from behind, tackling him.
That's the big highlight going around.
I mean, that effort. When I see you run like that, dude, that reminded me of Hayward. Just all out running the guy down from behind. That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Another name to keep an eye on in the late rounds is Cam Jackson out of Florida. Big guy, 6'6", 328, ran a 5.17 today. And he's projected to be another late day 3 pick. If you watch my mocks on Tuesday, I love Tonka Hemingway. A little bit undersized for a nose, but because they wouldn't need him right away, I think he could easily put on 10 or 15 pounds on that frame and be a nice 300-pound nose tackle eventually.
Yeah, if you're a betting man, Kenneth Grant's going to be the first-round pick. The Steelers have met with him.
Yeah,
they've been all over defensive linemen at the Senior Bowl. That's all they focused on. They've already met with 11 defensive linemen at the draft. That's far and away the biggest position group. They're going defensive line in the first round. I'd be shocked if they didn't.
Joe Rutter named 4 that he sees as that potential pick at 21, and they were Grant, Walter Nolan from Mississippi, Oregon's
Yep.
Derek Harmon, and A&M's Shamar Stewart. And I thought Harmon was interesting because when they talked to him, he said that he's modeled his whole game after Cam Hayward. If he's not sure how to do something, he wants to learn something, wants to get better, he goes and watches video of Cam Hayward doing it.
Wow.
Shamar Stewart's very interesting. He's supposed to be like an uber athlete. He has no production in college, though. He had like 1 sack this past season and not too much. But he's supposed to be like lights out defensive end / defensive tackle. He's real interesting. The Steelers have met with him too. So there's interest there.
Yeah, I think he's the A&M kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ramon Foster was talking about him yesterday on the Steelers.
He's intrigued a lot of people. He impressed a lot of people at the Senior Bowl, just the way he, played and the way he looked. And
he didn't impress Ramon Foster. He was
Ramon Foster didn't like him.
No, he was very down on Texas A&M in general. He said they look like when they get off the bus they should be unbeatable. He said, but none of the Texas A&M linemen have on defense have panned out in the NFL. Of course, we know DeMarvin Leal, but
that's a bad example.
No, he was saying like unlike like let's take Wisconsin for example. He didn't use that, but I will. Where all of a sudden you get guys from Wisconsin showing up to play defense and they're solid NFL players, whereas Texas A&M these guys are showing up and maybe it's not translating to the NFL.
It only takes one to change the narrative. I mean, I don't off the top of my head I can't even think of anybody else besides Stewart and a couple other guys. So I wouldn't worry about the school they go to so much.
Yeah, Walter Nolan's teammate in Mississippi, JJ Pegas.
That's a name you hear a lot. Yep.
Yeah, he's a nice player too. He's more of a mid-round guy, maybe late day 3, early day 4.
It's deep. Alfred Collins from Texas supposed to really been showing out. He's pretty good. There's tons.
As far as
I wouldn't be surprised if they double dipped.
As far as corners go, Benjamin Morrison met with the Steelers.
Yeah,
when I read,
he's coming off he's a Notre Dame kid, right? He's coming off a bad injury, hip is real bad.
I think you and I talked in prep. Quincy Riley is another one that
in
would be a nice
rounds,
pick later rounds that I could see them going for. So
he's supposed to run real fast,
I was watching
4.2.
I think it was Matt Williamson on the Combine show with Foster and Labriola yesterday, and they were talking about my favorite guy, Siobhan Brevell, and they said he is the only corner besides Travis Hunter who has elite traits pending the results of how he runs, but he's an elite press corner. And whereas, Azariah Thomas is a kind of a Joey Porter clone. He's a guy who we might be able to get day 2, day 3. I don't think he's going to run a particularly fast time at the Combine. But then you look at the other guys like Will Johnson. He was kind of down on him. He doesn't think he's going to run a fast time. There's a possibility he could tumble down the board a little bit. Jahdae Barron is an interesting name, but he's strictly a nickel corner out of Texas.
No, he played outside this year. They say he can do both.
Yeah, but he's only they expect he's only going to be measured at 5'10" instead of 5'11", and he played outside out of necessity. His future in the NFL is probably as a nickel corner. He's also not expected to run
He's getting a lot of buzz lately, like top 20 buzz.
Yeah, wow. But if he posts the time they think he is, he'll easily.
He's not going to be fast.
Round. Yeah,
they're comparing him to Brian Branch basically, which is a pretty good player.
Yeah,
which is a pretty good player.
But he's a safety, and now you're talking about a quarterback.
Yeah, nickel. Yeah.
The guy, a guy who is a nickel corner, who is really interesting. Probably get him in on late day 2. Is Hairston out of Kentucky?
Yeah, that's a pretty good player.
If you're going to get a nickel corner to tie the room together, that's a really nice guy. But if you're going to go for an elite press corner. Again, pending him running, which everybody thinks he'll be fine because it was a non-contact ACL injury to Brevell, then Brevell's the guy. But if you go, Azariah Thomas and Joey Porter, you'll have some growing pains with the two because they're both very handsy. But at the same time, that could develop. He is literally a Joey Porter clone. If you watch his tape, he looks like Joey Porter.
Did the Steelers beat with him?
Not Thomas yet. Not yet. I think the only corners they've met with is
I meant Ravel.
No, not Ravel either.
Not yet, right?
I think everybody kind of wants to see. Okay, are you back? Are you back? Right. Are you really ready to go?
Yeah, this corner group took a hit with injuries. Morrison, Ravel, the Michigan kid too. Those are the three top corners with the Colorado kid. So I don't know if the corner is that deep. It's a little risky.
I think we missed the boat on corners. Last year they were all set up for any that we wanted. This is not the year. This year I'm actually hoping for a double dip. I want a double dip with defensive line. If things fall well, we could get a really, really nice defensive lineman in the first round and get a really good defensive lineman a little bit later too. Yep. And both could be starting.
Really good point.
The Steelers have met with Jihadi Barron though. They have met with him.
As far as Morrison
goes, Benjamin Morrison too. So
as far as Morrison goes, I mean, if you watch his tape before the injury, he played better 2 years ago than he did this year. He was on the downside. I like Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I would not take that guy before round 3. I just don't. He's good. I just don't think he's that good. I'm scared about the idea of Barron. It ain't exactly like we're good at drafting corners. We kind of fell into Joey Porter, so fingers crossed. But Zy Alexander, that's another guy that's a nice player, and you could probably get him on day 2.
I can't wait to see these guys run. I think it's Friday, right? The cornerbacks are running. I can't wait to see them run.
Should be good.
It's the most 40 is the most important time for cornerbacks than any other position. They say it's the 40 time. So I can't wait to see them run.
Cam Hayward said on his podcast, he did it early this week because he had a bunch of former Steelers on, and he said on his podcast that the 40 times are all bullshit. He said whatever they say they run, he said it's not accurate.
Yeah,
really? At the combine or at pro day?
At combine.
Is he saying the record keeping is off or like?
He didn't specify, but he just implied that they say they run faster than they really do.
Did Cam run slow? Was that his issue? Yeah. He got short shifted.
He could say, he could say that, but I mean, they televise it live. I mean, and they have a big clock that says what it is when they cross the line.
But to his point, I think a lot of the NFL teams are going to that GPS tracking now more than the 40 time. Because, again, you could spend a month training for that and do well, and it doesn't translate to football, whereas your GPS time is your actual time on the field. So I know a lot of teams are going to that now.
Yeah.
I was like judging just by 40 was kind of weird because, you got 2 tries, but if you get a bad jump off, on the line in the NFL, then just get a better jump off the next play. So the fact that I forget who it was, but ran the 40, and the very first thing the guys watching said, he got off a little slow there. That's going to affect him. I'm like, so he got off a little slow. His entire stock is now affected. I'm like, little frustrating.
That's why some of these guys are not running at the combine. They want to run at that pro day where it's comfortable, where they have time to prepare. That's why it's
where somebody's stock goes like astronomically higher because of what they do in the 40. Like that makes me nervous. It's almost like certain analysts set aside like the other things they've seen with their own eyes that, happen in games or whatever, and focus so heavily on this 40 time. And all of a sudden this guy is, moves way up in the draft, and that always makes me nervous because I just think there's a lot more to it than that.
I think when Porter ran a 4.5, that's why he dropped to us at 32.
I agree.
Probably was. Probably was.
Yeah.
But then you also
and the penalties too.
Oh yeah, I mean there are other, but I mean they really were hoping he'd run a 4.4, and it didn't happen. And I think that's why he went all the way down to 32.
There's only 2 positions that the 40 time matters. It's cornerback and wide receiver. And from a wide receiver standpoint, look at Xavier Worthy last year. He jumped up the board and he produced. So those 2 positions, you can more rely on the 40 time. The other guy I'm thinking of in recent years who really, showed up at the combine and wowed people was DK Metcalf. And he turned himself from a 3rd round pick into a 1st round pick.
Right.
Yeah, that's worked out pretty good for Seattle.
I'm not saying it doesn't work and help some players, but we've also seen it, like falsely inflated.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
It goes both ways. And so
it does.
It would make me nervous if the Steelers took somebody all of a sudden, that we didn't think they were interested in because they ran this really fast 40
Bob,
times.
to your point, look at Anthony Richardson. Like he went off at the combine, and and you are the one that's really down on him more than anybody. He was
everybody ignored
awesome
his
at the combine, and the Colts fell for it, and I don't know, not looking good.
They just ignored his tape.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
The more I think about it, this guy, what the hell's his name? Jahdae Barron. He's got Steelers written all over him. Good tackler, good football IQ. This is a Mike Tomlin guy. Don't be surprised if he's still there at 20, 21, that the Steelers take him.
I mean,
all those intangibles,
Yeah, only problem is he's a straight nickel corner. He's not necessarily a bad.
Well, they need a nickel corner badly.
And
he's got outside experience too, so he could do both.
I'm telling you, he's not great on the outside. He didn't have a great year this year. He's pretty good in the nickel. But I don't know if you want to take a nickel corner. Well, you got to look at everybody not everybody is raving about him. I mean, most people who like him will say, "Oh, he can do both." But the people who don't like him or are down on him, he's slow. He can only play the nickel because of his size. And it really depends how he measures. If he comes in and he's really 5'11", 190, then okay.
That's what he's going to be. Well,
that's what he's listed.
5'10", 190. Yeah, 5'10". He's going to be 5'10".
Yeah, if he comes in at 5'10", now all of a sudden, it's hard for a 5'10" corner to play on the outside. It just is. All the receivers are 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but 6'2", 6'3" corners don't grow on trees either. You don't find them too often.
Yeah, but there's a lot of big ones in the.
Wait, what round are we saying that they could take this kid?
He's going to be a first round pick.
That's what I thought.
I think he's early.
Daniel Jeremiah has him 9th overall.
9th?
Yeah. His 9th prospect overall.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
I'm telling you, and the NFL guys. Daniel Jeremiah is wired in.
Yes.
You could pretty much take his rankings. He's pretty close. So if the NFL guys love this kid.
He knows his stuff.
Not all the NFL guys.
I haven't seen a bad word written about him yet. Honestly.
Well, we'll see when he measures. Like I said, pre-combine is one thing. A lot's going to change after this weekend. I mean, it's hard when you're doing these evaluations. It's really hard before you actually see them. And
CBS Sports has him ranked as the top 5 corners in the draft.
Yeah.
Every guy ahead of him is 6'3", 6'2", and then he's 5'11".
Yeah, I mean, personally, there's a deep sleeper I like. Who's probably going to be around in late on day 4, maybe go in the 6th, probably the 7th. Fentrell Cypress. If I want a nickel corner at a Florida State, that's a nice nickel corner who you can get late and not have to spend the draft capital. I just don't love the idea of taking a nickel corner in the first round.
To be honest, I don't think I would take him either, but I think he's someone the Steelers I could see the Steelers falling in love with.
Bob doesn't want to take a one-trick pony, guys.
Exactly.
I mean, if you had a chance to get Brian Branch.
Wait, he was a safety.
I think I might.
He's a safety. He was a safety who had cornerback skills. I don't want a cornerback whose comp is a safety.
Yeah. But you're talking, yeah, I see your point. But you're talking about a guy who could tackle, who's all over the field, making plays. That's valuable.
Brian Branch is a great player. I wouldn't make that comp because now if he played safety and you were saying he could, that would be a different thing because then he's okay. I'm playing safety and maybe I can play some nickel corner. That's a nice value trait, kind of like Minka when he came out of college. I'm a safety, but I can play corner. I love guys like that. Corners who I think might make good safeties. I don't know. That means you're not great in man coverage.
Yeah, Dresden, we talked about this before. They missed the boat on corners last year.
Oh, big time.
Had a chance to take one.
You had to pick it, any of them. Any.
Yeah. I wouldn't take a corner in the first round of this draft either. I don't think I would. I'd go defensive tackle or
like none. You wouldn't.
It depends. Like the 3 top guys are injured, coming off injuries. Like if Ravel wasn't injured, I'd love him. But you don't know exactly with this team's record with injured guys in the first round. I wouldn't go anywhere near them. Can you think of another name that you would take that would realistically be there at 21?
That's a good point. I get what you're saying. I mean, There could be
I mean,
one that
Ravel might
falls.
be there, but you're gonna roll the dice.
That's the thing. Like when you start talking top 3 corners or top 3 whatever, like there's a chance one of them could fall. I mean,
They could be.
Every year there's a run of something else and it pushes everything down. And there's a lot of times where Steelers get lucky. It's one of the things they want. So it just depends on how the board falls. It really does.
The only slam dunk in this draft, as far as corners go, is Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter, yeah.
I
That's
said
like-
we talked the other night that I think this is a little bit of a wonky draft, and so I do think
It's a lot of a wonky
possibility that whatever we're thinking at 21, everything could end up ass over end based on what other people do. I think some of those quarterbacks that are a little bit iffy. I think they're going to get inflated and taken sooner. I think that there's a lot of guys that are kind of like, I don't want to call them mid-level talents, but not top 10 talents that are right in there all lumped together. And it'll be just interesting to see what run goes, what kind of run they go on with the position.
No, I think you're right. I think wonky is the perfect word to use.
Yeah. There's a world where, Grant and Walter Nolan could be gone. All the good corners could be gone. And what do you do?
Have they said, like, are the experts
but it's
saying,
fun.
are they saying that this is a weak class in general? Or is that
I
what
heard
they've been?
Daniel Jeremiah put it good,
No.
almost to what Bob said. It's not a stars draft, it's a starters draft. You can find a starter throughout the draft, but there's not a lot of stars in this draft.
Like for
So if
2
you're looking
years,
for-
they've been saying this draft isn't going to be like that good, kind of sandwiched in between 2 better drafts in 24 and 26. But now that it's getting closer, they're starting to say, there is some talent, they're separating some players out and cream rising to the top and whatever other analogies they use. But they're still saying that it's a whole lot of like second round players, do you know what I mean? All lumped together that, somebody's going to have to go in the first round.
But the key will be, this is a year where being smart with your picks is going to be really important, because you're drafting starters. There's a few stars. Travis Hunter's a star.
There's like 3.
Yeah,
right?
You got to be careful. There are guys who could be stars who are, and you've just got to address it. So it's not so much that you're drafting for need; it's that you're drafting the depth of the position. I know if I'm getting a top 3 or 4 defensive tackle, I'm getting a pretty good pick. I know if I'm getting a top 3 or 4 corner at 21, it might be a little too early to take a corner. Just depending. It just depends on how it falls. But if Nolan's gone, Grant's gone, and now all of a sudden I'm getting cornerback probably 2, because I think Will Johnson is actually cornerback 5 in this draft, although everybody's got him rated at 2. If I'm getting cornerback 2 or cornerback 3 there.
Yeah, but Bob, who's cornerback 2 and 3? Are those guys coming off injuries? And I don't.
No, I mean, Ravel, again, this is all going to change when they run. That non-contact injury, I mean, this is a guy who we would not have any shot at him.
No, I know.
He had played his whole senior year. There's no way we would have a shot at him. But, you look at guys, I don't think Morrison's very good. Zy Alexander, you get him in the second round, third round. Okay, that's a pretty good one. I like Azariah Thomas because I don't hate the idea of 2 Joey Porters on the outside of my defense.
Let's take a look at Relic's question before
we got to answer this.
Wrap up for tonight. Where'd it go? Would you all be okay with Dante Jackson re-signing and not drafting a cornerback this draft?
Nope.
The first part of that, hell no.
No.
Hell no.
Well, I'm
not
not
opposed to Dante Jackson coming back if it was reasonable, but I still want to draft somebody.
Sign one, draft one. Sign one.
Yeah.
Draft one.
If you bring Dante Jackson back, there's your nickel cornerback. Draft a cornerback 2. Put Dante Jackson and his little tiny self in the.
The problem is he's allergic to tackling, so you don't want him in the nickel either.
Well, I mean,
he's a
most
playmaker.
quarterbacks are
That's the
allergic
thing.
to tackling.
Here's the thing, though. He's a playmaker, though. He did have 5-6 interceptions.
Some of those were.
I mean, did that lead
gimmies.
the team? Did that lead the team in interceptions?
Yeah, I mean,
well, there you go.
It's a low bar again. We keep going to this low bar.
You say low bar, but he was number 1 or 2 or top 3 interceptions in the league before he got hurt.
Yeah, he's also very fast, so he could play the nickel. I mean, he's smaller.
Don't get me wrong.
Like Leanne said, the money. If you're telling me it's 4 million a
there you
season,
go.
then fine.
I mean, it really does come down to cost with some of these guys. Agreed.
I got one question for you guys. I know we're talking defense, but reported this week, and I think we knew it before, that Quinn Ewers played that entire season with like a torn oblique, and now the Steelers have met with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you consider a second round?
No,
I think I would.
No, I would. He'll be available on day 3.
Oh.
Well, now that I know,
I say he's there in the third round, which I think he'll be gone before that. But
now that I know he was injured, I don't know.
He played the entire season with a torn oblique. This guy's he was
good, but was he really that great before that?
5-star recruit, big time.
Yeah, he was a
prospect.
recruit.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd roll the dice with Quinn Ewers. 100%.
Not in the third round.
And the only reason why, because Isaiah Bond, when I brought him up earlier, a couple pods ago, they said that he didn't have a lot of production, but they cited it was because of the quarterback play.
Yeah, I mean, Ewers had a bad season. Well, not a bad season. I think he still put up decent stats. But if you take into consideration he played with a torn oblique, that explains a lot.
It does.
I mean, shit.
But this is before I knew this. This is the first time I'm hearing he had an oblique injury.
Yeah, it was reported this week that he played the entire season with it. So
I don't know. Day 3,
if you're fishing for you're trying to get lucky on a franchise quarterback, and
day 3, yeah, I guess.
Okay, Quinn Ewers or Jackson Dart.
Well, Dave's in love with Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I mean Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
But if it's Jackson Dart in the first round or Quinn Ewers in the third, I'd probably go Quinn Ewers.
Neither one.
Jackson Dart's going to surprise you guys. I'm going to die on that hill. He's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL.
In the CFL, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Right.
He's going to go to the Rams or the Vikings or somebody like that, and they're going to win a lot of games with that kid.
Yeah.
No,
all the hate for Dante Jackson. He did lead the team in interceptions. I know he wasn't the best tackler.
That's what I said.
But he wasn't good at interceptions.
But how many tip balls did he just land in his hands? I think it was 3 out of the 5.
So he should have had 8. All right.
You all did not see people running by him.
I understand what you're saying, but
he
was really
I don't disagree.
That's Big Poppy. Yes.
Kyle McCord.
Yes. I'm telling you, Jordan Palmer says he's the best tools quarterback in the draft.
Your boy Shador is dropping like a rock, by the way, too.
Emphasis on tools.
I hope he drops to us. If we do, I'm all about that pick. I would love it in the first round.
No. If his dad wasn't named Deion Sanders, he'd be a third-round pick.
Hey, you know what, though? I watched Rob Parker the other day on Shador Sanders, and I 1,000,000% agree with this. Why is he getting all the hate about not throwing, not wanting to participate in the combine? Caleb Williams didn't participate last year. Jaden Daniels didn't participate last year. Well, a lot of people do care about it, and that's why he's dropping. They're citing he's a prima donna. He doesn't want to throw. So
he is.
So Caleb Williams was a prima donna. Jaden Daniels was a prima donna.
Yeah.
What big time quarterback in the last 5 years has thrown?
Wait. Those two guys knew they were going 1-2, and they didn't have to throw. They knew they were 1-2 in the draft as top quarterback. Shador doesn't know where he's going. So to throw, to compete in the combine is different. Those two quarterbacks were locked in. They didn't have anything to prove.
You know who's licking their chops
I
right
didn't
now?
know he was compared to
Brady.
Slash. That changes my whole outlook on Sanders. I'll go dust off my Slash jersey.
No, he's not. He's not
anything.
even 1/100th of the athlete that Cordell Stewart was. Not even close.
Cordell Stewart.
But he's a better quarterback.
He's a better passer, probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
and I'm telling you
they're
right
two
now,
different players.
You know who loves all this Shador Sanders slander? Sorry, Dave.
No, you're good.
Is Tom Brady and the Raiders. They love it because
they have Stafford.
They got Stafford now.
I'm telling you, Brady coached Sanders. Stafford ain't going to play for more than a year or two. And if you can let him sit behind Stafford, I'm telling you, Sanders is not going to get past the Raiders.
If Stafford's a done deal, they're not drafting. They're not drafting Sanders. There's no way.
He's 37 years old. They got to
draft. But they have so many holes in that team. They need players to put around Stafford.
Yeah.
Hey, look at last year. The Falcons picked up Kirk Cousins. Who'd they sign? Who'd they draft?
Yeah, but that's Kirk Cousins. And you're talking about paying this guy $50 million, right? Is what he's supposedly asking for.
Yeah, there's always one guy that's in that green room waiting forever to get announced. I could see it being Sanders.
And the Falcons paid Kirk Cousins basically $50 million and drafted Michael Penix.
Oh,
that's the strangest thing of all time. They'll never be able to explain it to me.
Yeah, that was the exception, not the rule.
All right, guys, if you've joined us tonight, we appreciate you. We appreciate all the comments and jumping in. If you're catching this show after it was already recorded, please drop us a comment. Follow all of us on social media. You can see our usernames up on the screen, I think. You can also follow the Steelers Sanctuary page and the Steelers Sanctuary podcast page on Twitter, and follow the podcast here on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us out. We appreciate all of you. Everybody have a good night.
What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to chase after them?
Oh. That's just what they'll be expecting us to do.
Probably worth the Google.